Welcome to this week's Reddit reply. We're going to be talking about campaign cards missing from somebody's box. We're going to talk about Sandman being harder than you thought, Agents of Shield being too easy, possibly? Question mark, and so much more. Once again, for those that don't know, we actually have additional questions that are answered at the very end of this video, like in the last like 2 or 3 or 4 questions roughly, will be answered only to my YouTube members and my patrons over on Patreon. So anytime you join the woodworking beginner tier or higher, you'll get access to those additional Reddit reply responses, as well as other fun things you can vote on or videos or whatever else. So everyone that supports this channel, I greatly appreciate it. It helps out a ton. So thank you so much for doing that. And yeah, let's jump into this week's Reddit reply. All right, first one we have is campaign cards missing from Mad Titan Shadow, what to do. And so after double or triple checking, I'm definitely missing the 23 campaign cards, which is crazy to be missing that much. From Mad Titan Shadow expansion I recently bought. The box was sealed, as were the packs inside, blah, blah, blah. What should they do? So generally speaking, at least this was within the past few years, Fantasy Flight Games would tell you to go back to wherever you bought the game from. They had like a long post about this, I think, where it's like if you bought it from a board game store, they'll get credit from us. So just like return it to them and get a new copy and they'll get credited and don't worry about it. And then the online people were like, well, what do we do? And they're like, well, the same thing and whatever. So it's fine. Um, so contacting Fantasy Flight Games really won't do much. And it's probably because they're not a big company. I don't want to say that, but they probably just don't have like cards lying around. Like a lot of times we think about like smaller board game publishers. Fantasy Flight Games seems like a bit bigger, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't know how it is with the corporate structure of Asmodee and Embracer and all that fun stuff. But anyway, I digress. They don't just have like cards lying around, so they're not going to just like mail it to you or whatever. Like you might get mailed a game piece from a company or anything like that. So you can't do it that way. That's why whenever you buy anything, double, triple check. I get bad at this sometimes where like I don't check right away and then I have to like check later on and I get a little scared. But I think it was in Arkham Horror, I was missing a card and I had to reach out to Amazon, which crazy enough, I try not to buy from Amazon too much, but it was the only one that had this expansion. And I remember buying it, it was missing one. They just told me to hold on to it. And I was like, okay. And then they just sent me another box. And I had all this like extra set that I couldn't really do much with because it was a campaign set and I didn't really need it. I ended up selling to somebody for super cheap. And I was like, it's missing this one card. Good luck. And they were like, we don't need it. I was like, that's weird. You kind of need it for the campaign. But anyway, it is kind of a pain to deal with Fantasy Flight Games and that. So just FYI, check your stuff right away. It's super important because reaching out to Fantasy Flight Games for that generally won't get you anywhere. I've heard some people have success with it, but not a ton of people. But you usually have to go back to your board game store or the online store or whatever else. And this is a side note too. I've purchased a lot of things through Game Nerds and they don't sponsor this channel. They don't pay me anything. They don't whatever. But I've had really good success that like if I'm missing things, they will try their best to fix it. They can't always do it and they're a little slow on emails. But when they get to the email and whatnot, they can usually help out. And I've been really thankful for that. And not to put down any other like issues, but they're the only ones I've had to deal with like customer service that way. I've had to deal with customer service with other distributors, but not like for missing stuff. All right, so they're talking about Sandman is harder than I thought. I just got got his set through Kingdom Come cards. They were out of the recommendation mod, so I'm using aim science, which sounds rough, and sitting chaos. It's hard not to be able to defend. Sand counters add up really fast too. So, did you notice the problem? Did you notice the problem here? Uh, it's very, very interesting because indirect damage Sandman taught us so much about the game. So if you hadn't played Sandman when he first came out, everyone thought you couldn't defend against him because indirect damage gets around defense. Well, it doesn't, right? Indirect damage just always has to be assigned. That's probably the better way to look at it. Every single damage must be assigned. And it was really weird. There wasn't really weird rulings in the beginning, but there's just like a lot of weird information in the beginning about it. But for those that don't know, if Sandman's attacking 3, right, and you defend for 2, and he's dealing 3 indirect damage, that damage just has to be assigned to you. So 2 of it goes into your defense and 1 would hit you. It's not like all 3 would hit you. And it's not like that you can't defend or anything like that. You absolutely can. This is just one of those weird rule things that like Us that have been around the game for a little bit longer now know, because we all struggle with this. Don't feel bad ever struggling with the rules. It happened to all of us, especially this. I remember a lot of people struggled with Sandman. But yeah, it's just one of those weird things where we have this thought of that. And I think it's more so because um, there are times when you defend and indirect damage hits you at a different point or something like that. Like after the attack, you take indirect damage, that we have it like weirdly set up in our mind that we can't take damage from. I don't know. I'm sure there's a scenario that kind of like messed with us. That's what usually happens to me. But yeah, so you can absolutely defend indirect damage. Allies can also take indirect damage. They just can't take more than what their health is. So, like for example, if you have an ally with 2 health and it's 6 indirect damage, they can't take all the damage. They can only take 2 of it, and then the rest would have to go somewhere. So, just like I said, you have to be able to assign it everywhere. That's probably the best way to look at it. All right, so is Shield or Agents of Shield too easy, or Nick and Maria just too good? And they talk about how they used Nick Fury and Maria Hill and played through the game and a lot of fun stuff. Both. Maria Hill is incredibly strong. I mean, just incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. I cannot stress that enough. Nick Fury is also strong. And it's funny though, because like people are like, oh, Nick Fury's like kind of weak. And I think compared to Maria Hill, yeah, like he's not Maria Hill level, but like he's still pretty strong overall, I think, as a hero. Very enjoyable hero to play. But yeah, he's still pretty strong. The problem is I found that the Agents of Shield box as a whole is really easy. Not Let me rephrase this. Black Widow, I think, is an okay challenge. Um, it's basically what I would expect from a first villain scenario. MODOK and uh the leaping guy, whatever his name is. I'm drawing a blank. I apologize. It's been a long day. Um, but the second and third scenario are basically Baltrock, Batroc. Basically also very easy scenarios as well. The Citizen V scenario is like better with the Thunderbolts. Like it's interesting, but there is a way to like game the system a little bit. I've heard it's better on multiplayer. Maybe it is. But you can game the system a little bit, but it's still an enjoyable scenario, but it gets a little easy after a handful of plays. So again, grain of salt. And Baron Zema, if you want to call him that. He's he's not easy, but his whole thing in the beginning is just boring. So I think he's the only like hard one in the scenario, and it's mainly because of the flip is the hardest part of him. Because when he flips, he comes out swinging with like 5 attack on standard, which is crazy. You have to be ready for it, which is cool. Like I want that. That's a good design in my opinion, to prepare you for the flip and like a massive hitter. But yeah, it's a um, very interesting way of it. And I know people say like play on expert, but Troc expert and MODOK expert aren't much more difficult. Like I mean, they're obviously more difficult, but they're not like that much more difficult. Black Widow is better. The Thunderbolts are a bit better, but like your ally or the minions don't scale on difficulty that much, right? It's really like Citizen V that's gonna scale, so it doesn't affect it too much. Like it affects it a little bit, obviously, with some of the ways the cards work, but it's not like a ton. So just note that. And Baron Zemo, the final fight. On expert, he's tougher, but it's more so because you have to balance the counters in the beginning. That's the hardest thing. It's just if you balance the counters in the beginning, you should be fine. But that is one of the more difficult things about it. All right. Last one we're going to talk about for today is that this person is hoping to get opinions from this community on Ashes Reborn, Ashes Ascendancy. So here's the thing, and you can see I'm the top vote on this, or I guess in my column. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I upvoted it, so it shows it. It automatically upvotes my own things. I'm not that pretentious that I do that on Reddit. I do that my own stuff. Anyway, so they're talking about their thoughts and feelings about this game, and I think a lot of people have good comments on this. Here's my pitch. I'm not sponsored by Ashes. They don't pay me. They don't really work with me on anything. They originally gave me like the core box and some things early on, but everything else I purchased. I'm gonna be backing the Kickstarter, or I think it's a Kickstarter. I'm gonna be backing that probably just at the regular box tier of $50 and just get that. Um, but here's the thing. It's an LCG-ish game, right? The deck building is a little more open than Marvel Champions is because you could theoretically really take the same whatever cards and pair it with your Phoenix Born. however you want. Like, I could take the same 30 cards unless they're locked to that hero, that specific hero. I can take those 30 cards and move them from here to this Phoenix Born to this Phoenix Born to this Phoenix Born. Like, it's a much more open style of playing, which some people like, some people don't. So just FYI on that. But the deck building is very open. I think it's generally pretty good. You can get a lot of Phoenix Born locked cards because they have so many now on one hero. So you can get like a set of three, a set of three, a set of three of their cards, which can really power them up sometimes and do some really cool stuff. Obviously, trying to match the cards that work with your Phoenix Born's ability, whatever that is usually key. Doesn't always work out, but it's usually key. So anyway, that deck construction process is there and it's fun. Marvel Champions, you're kind of like flying through your deck pretty fast and like reshuffling. That's not what you're going to be doing in this game, right? It's a much slower paced game, much more methodical game. Again, because you start with your starting five and you know what you start with, it's much more interesting to me of like getting that early lead and that early jump and how are you going to balance things. And because you know mostly what the villain is going to do, and then I say villain, but really the uh the enemy, the main enemy. I can't even think of what they're called at the second. When you face the main enemy, you know generally what they're going to do. You just have some face down cards. You don't know what's under there. But and I guess you roll some dice too. So it seems like there's a lot of randomness. But generally speaking, I know if they're going to attack. I know if they're going to be flipping over things. I know how many actions there are. I know the order. I know where that sets me up for next round. Right? Like there's a lot of forward thinking in that game, which I really like and I really enjoy. I think there's more forward thinking in Ashes than there is in Marvel Champions. And also because I have a set mana pool, right? So you roll a bunch of dice in the beginning. And I know, for generally speaking, I can manipulate it, but I know what costs what in my hand and I know what dice I have. So I can think about, okay, this turn I want to play this one because it'll help this card or it'll help this. Like, you got to think 3 or 4 turns ahead. Versus Marvel Champions, you really can't do that as much. You obviously can to a point, but because you're getting such a new set of a new hand of cards each time, you're going to go through your cards faster. So your strategy changes based on what those cards are. Versus I'm trying to be as efficient as possible with the 5 cards in my hand, the dice I have, and the cards on the table. So to me, I've always equated it as like playing a chess match because of just the amount of strategy that goes into it. Some people like it and some people don't. So it's entirely up to you. Um, Definitely try it. I will say Ash's Ascendancy, I think on Kickstarter is like 50 or $60 or whatever it is. There's a chance, and I want to stress that it's just a chance, that by the time it goes to retail, it'd probably be discounted, right? It looks like they're charging full price for this game and not really giving a discount. For better or for worse, that's just what it is. I know some people hate that, but whatever. Um, so there's a shot at retail that they'll get it like discounted because a lot of times you can get games from like miniature market or whatever at a discounted rate. Now, with the tariffs, I don't know. I don't know where Ashes is produced, right? I assume it's in China, but I have no idea. I do know their print on demand stuff is in the States, though, or it's from a United States company slash European company. From my understanding, that company, it's Game Forge, if I remember correctly. They had it in one of their updates in their Kickstarter. You can go look them up. They have printers in the States and in Europe. So it shouldn't be affected by the tariffs, but I don't know, right? I wish a lot more companies were more forthcoming of where their games are printed. It'd be really nice to know. But anyway, that's a whole side note. But that's just what it is. So I think Ashes Reborn is a phenomenal game. I highly recommend it. It just like Marvel Champions, it gets better with more expansions that you have, which is going to cost money. I will say one of the coolest things they're doing, right? And if you're into proxying cards, when the print on demand section is opened up, you will be able to buy basically high res PDFs of whatever cards. And from my understanding, it's just like a servicing fee of a couple bucks to get it. Then you can pick out your pack, build it or whatever, get that PDF sheet or whatever to print out your cards so that you can print your own deck. Just use playing cards in an opaque um, card sleeve and play it. And you can actually play it in tournaments that way too, right? As long as they're sleeved and they're properly done and whatever. You're allowed to play in tournaments with that in case that's a thing you worry about. So anyway, just options, just throwing all the options out there. So, all right, that's enough of this. We're going to now go to the member and Patreon side of this week's Reddit reply. Again, thank you all for being here. Make sure to like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, all that fun stuff. And I'll see you all next week.